Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here for another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Moon Knight Episode 4, entitled The Tomb, subtitled, I'm Cheating on My Wife with Myself. Let me bring in my co-host and we're going to jump on in. Welcome to David Nemesis Howard.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Glad to be here. Glad we're back. We had to take a little bit of break, and if you'll indulge me for a second, I'd love to get a little shameless plug in just real quick. Glad to announce that OPSEC, my comic book, issue 1, is now live on asapimagination.com, so go pick it up. Went live yesterday.
Congratulations. Y'all go check that out. Put the links on the screen, then, so people can find it.
I will.
All right, cool. Welcome to Jeff, Dr. Faye Bracey. What's up, Bracey?
First and foremost, congratulations, Nim. Can't wait to get a hold of a copy myself and see what's up with it. Looking forward to it. Secondly, is it really cheating, or is it just a threesome that's consensual?
I'm going to leave the logistics of that alone, and I'm going to say welcome to Steve Shadewing Sellers. Welcome, Steve.
Well, congrats to them on your book. I have seen like a couple of the preview pages, and they look really good, so I can't wait to see the full issue. As for Moon Knight, I think the theme for this episode for me is going to be stop letting the villain talk. Stop letting him monologue. What did you learn nothing from Syndrome? But we'll get into that.
We'll get into that, okay? So as always, I will start off with my general thoughts and then throw it off to my co-host. It's hard to fully encapsulate what I'm feeling based on the fact that I've seen all the episodes and the fact that I have retroactively changed a lot of my perspective. It looks different to me after it's finished and after I study some things than it did when I first went through it. So without giving too much away, I guess I'll say some of the things this episode does good is that it features a very specific arc from the comics, and we'll touch on that in a minute. And it again serves up its base and meatiest issue of, is this real? Or is this happening all in his head? And that's kind of the heart of Moon Knight, at least the direction the character got taken in certain runs is, how much is real and how much is imagined. And but the thing that it does that it takes the twist is, and it's in the final reveal and it's in the final 2 episodes. The thing that happens is that it moves away from the struggle of imagination versus reality and throws us completely into the Egyptian lore and mythology. And that part ramps up to the end of the episodes, and is it real or not, actually kind of fades. So this is kind of the last hurrah of what you're going to see of the bulk of the episode being about the struggle of reality versus imagination. Because it kind of veers away from this in a little bit more subtle way as things go on. Yeah, all that's number 1. Number 2, I don't know if my co-hosts feel this way, but I sure would like a flashback with Harrow as Moon Knight. We talked about it so much, and he references it almost every time he opens his mouth, and he's bitter and Khonshu's a user, and Amit's a better person to serve, but I sure would like to see some of that previous Moon Knight action from him. That would just be a cool thing to see. And finally, I have to say this because this is a bit of a pink elephant, and I really don't want to give too much away as the episodes end, but we get another big major slap you in the face hint as to what's really going on. So this show is kind of playing 5-dimensional chess. That part I like, because I like layers within layers within layers and Easter eggs and hints and things where you have to kind of deduce and put all the clues together and see if your conclusions are right. That part I love. The problem is that there's only 6 episodes. So when you stuffed half a dozen episodes with so many comic storylines and so many Easter eggs and so many things that you've just been teasing and hinting at, if there's any kind of payoff, you don't really have a lot of time with which to enjoy said payoff. And on this particular thing, I am talking about, spoiler alert, the third personality. Because it once again is, a slap in the face here that it's there, but we don't really get to spend a lot of time with it. So I'm not saying that the episode was bad. I did enjoy it, especially the first time I saw it. It's just that I really just think we need more episodes. It's not a matter of what they're doing being bad. It's more a matter of what they're doing being rich and thick and layered and multifaceted, as the character of Moon Knight himself is, or at least as he began to be developed. So kind of a very busy character to try to cram all that story in just a half a dozen episodes. It's so funny because they do it like the opposite. Like shows that should be smaller, they got 22 episodes. And shows that should be longer, they got 6 episodes. I can't figure that one out. But anyway, let me hear from my co-host. So give me your general thoughts on this episode, and then we'll dive into specifics. Start with Bracey.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I kept hoping for the entire run that we would see a flashback to Harrow as the agent avatar of Khonshu. Where did the falling away come from? Where did the bitterness come from? Where was the usury? Where was the love of violence? Where's all the things he's rallying against now? And we never get that. I've got hopes that maybe season 2 will delve into that. This is a spooky, supernatural world. We might see Harrow's ghost at some point, Who knows? Anything's possible in the world of magic and mysticism where gods walk the earth, whether it's less than tangible or otherwise. But as for the episode itself, this again was a lot of fun. This series has consistently been my favorite of all the Disney Plus Marvel shows so far. I, of course, have some things I'm going to nitpick about a little bit, and some things are not even nitpicks. Just like, yeah, that doesn't happen. There's some things I just can't let go, even in a comic book world. But other than that, I really liked it. I like seeing the progression of the relationship between Steven, Mark's wife, and him, all coming together.
Layla.
Yeah, thank you, Layla. I was brain farting there for a second. I enjoyed that. I like seeing Steven come into his own. He's still a little annoying, but he's far less annoying than he was in those first couple of episodes. So I like seeing character growth. I like seeing character arcs, and we get some really exciting reveals. Again, we see what powerful actors we have working on this show. And I got to agree with Steve. Man, why do good guys let the bad guys get into their head? Don't listen to them. That's what they're going to do. They're going to get in your head. They're going to mess with you. They're going to Darth Vader or Palpatine the crap out of you. But no, everybody stops because he says something like, wait, that triggered something. I better stop and listen. And now that's going to have tremendous consequences at the end of the show. Damn it. But no, it's a trope. It is what it is. Tropes happen in shows, and you just kind of got to ride or die with them. And for the most part, I'm still going to ride with Moon Knight. Digging it.
You have to learn how to do like the best. You have to learn how to do like Batman does, because there's nothing you can say to him that he doesn't already know.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, overall thoughts about the episode?
Yeah, generally I liked it. I really love the Indiana Jones feeling of like the first half of the episode, first 2/3, because you got to get the sense that not only are you dealing with him and Layla together, you get the action scenes that feel very much out of a proper Indiana Jones movie, particularly with Layla's fight with that Heka priest. I mean, that was really, really well done. I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the revelation about who the avatar of Amit was. I just like, yeah, okay, that kind of makes historical sense, and I can dig it. All those sorts of things really came together. And then like the last third of the episode, it just gets into this really weird stuff. Which, if you've read the Jeff Lemire run, you're going to recognize some of that stuff.
Yes.
And it gets really really interesting. So yeah, my biggest problem is just, why are you letting the villain talk? Why are you letting this guy monologue? You know that this guy's a charismatic cult leader. He's gonna try to be suave and tell you everything you want to hear, or everything that is going to be used against you, and you can't trust anything he says. Why do people continue to listen to him? And especially since we've already seen before that he will take advantage of you if you let this guy talk. So it was just one of those things that kind of grated a little bit. But in terms of the content that it provided, the Mark Layla Stephen Grant thing, I kind of felt was pretty decent. It's not like the Hulk and Bruce Banner arguing over Betty. It's exactly the same thing. If it's like two sides of the same guy, are you really cheating? Yeah. So I would say like it's really kind of arguable. And so, and I will also agree also that Stephen Grant was less annoying here. Part of it is that he's in his element, which is that a lot of he's not doing the goofy Disney stuff. What he's doing is being the archaeologist. He is, looking at all the clues and trying to make sense of them. He's using his mind and using his knowledge of history and Egyptology and the Egyptian gods, to figure things out. Now, some of the stuff is sort of like kind of made me kind of roll my eyes a little bit. Like, really, you have to dig into the gullet of of this corpse to get the thing out? But like, okay, let's just kind of roll with it. It's fun. But yeah, and I'm kind of curious as to what's going on with the future. I tend to agree that they're definitely aiming towards something, particularly towards some of the end episode content, especially the last frame and who we see at the end. All of that. But I'd say, in general, I'd say this is one of the better episodes. It had less of the things that annoys me and more of the things that I like to see as a fan. And so overall, I would say this is fairly solid.
Also, just have to throw a plug in here for this concept, and I'm not saying it against anything Steve was saying. I'm just saying it to throw it out there because, again, my whole frame has changed on this show. Better than what we've had isn't the same as good. And so a lot of the stuff we see in this show is better than a whole lot of things we've seen before, but that doesn't mean it's always good. But I'll talk about that some more at the end of the final episode because again, I have to do some disencapsulating thing. So anyway, Nemesis, what do you think? Overall thoughts?
Yeah, the issue I see with this episode is it's not. I definitely agree with what you said. It's like there's not enough episodes because this one felt like two different types of shows crammed into one episode. With so the beginning we definitely have that. It almost felt like the Mummy, like the Brendan Fraser Mummy type thing, complete with gore and mummies that are going around and disemboweling people and all that. And I'm for all that. I'm me. I'm down with that. I'm all for it, and I loved it. And then we transitioned then into the fantastical by the end, and I was down with that as well. And once again, I will not mention him again. I'm not giving him any more free plugs for his book or for Disney Publishing, but it reminds me a lot of that. The thing I had, and I'm going to disagree with you guys a little bit on letting the villain talk. I hear what you're saying. I don't mind the villain getting in someone's head and talking, but the problem is that you have to establish that the villain has a way of knowing people's weaknesses and being able to get into their mind and have that information. Either externally they got that information, or they have an ability where they get at the information where they can prey on somebody's insecurities and weaknesses. For instance, the Darth Vader can sense your fear, can sense your anger, and so he can play on that. So that's why when we see him goading Luke with your sister, because he can read his thoughts, he can get into his mind and Return of the Jedi. So it makes perfect sense. Here, Harold has not shown that ability. We have no reason to know why he knows the marital relationships between these two and everything else. So that's why I don't think it makes any sense, or it doesn't make as much sense. But
I
if
think
he had,
the thing that bothers me, I think, is a little more in the vein of, Layla don't learn nothing. I
yeah,
mean, we've already seen him do this before, and it's like, why are you not learning from this?
this is true. This is true. I guess I could say if Layla's not going to learn nothing, then you also need to establish that this is her character flaw, that she has a real insecurity, a real problem, a real vulnerability in her relationship. Like she feels that she can't trust him. And you need to show that. This is one of those things where you do need to show, not tell, because just telling us that.
There are several instances where show not tell would have worked better, including one other thing that needed to be its own show, in addition to the Harrow stuff. But we'll get into that, I think.
Yeah. So, I don't necessarily have a problem with that concept per se, but I think that, like DT and the rest of you were saying, is like there's a number of things that are just kind of glossed over, and it's like, oh, we're going to tell you all this stuff and then move on. And it's like, if you really want to establish this and have it hit home and be as powerful as you think it's going to be, then you need to put the groundwork in order to make it work within the show itself. So,
now I will say that it's subtle, but Harrow does actually tell how he knows all this stuff, because that's something that bugged me in the previous episode and did bug me a little bit in this episode until I rewatched it. It's because he read Mark's scales, and husbands and wives share things, and this is how he knew what her dad's pet name for her and all these other little intimate secrets were.
See, but isn't that? Here's just my take on it. That's just such a MacGuffin, and it's like, if you're going to do that, give us a 30-second or 15 seconds of just images, flash, 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 flash. Where you can go back and like the nerds among us could go back and like pause and see. It's like, oh, look at that image right there showing them fight and her slapping him or something like that. Just that.
If we had more than 6 episodes, we probably could have had that.
Well,
Yeah.
see,
As it is, it's back to doing the work of the show.
well, see, once again, in this, what I've been talking about on Twitter for the past 2 days with Kenobi and reading that whole thing about how if you're going to give the villain this information, like Nim said, we need to see a flashback of them, but you need to establish a pattern of them having some type of detective skill or some reason that they're going after this information in particular, and how they got access to it, and how they memorize all that, and how they know how to make it a cohesive weapon against the person they're using and all that, because that's psychology, and everybody's not a psychologist. Everybody wouldn't know what to do with things that they might be able to say to stop you in your tracks or whatever. But I'm saying that there needs to be some type of in-story justification as to why this kind of thing is going on and why this person is doing it. And if this person has a history of doing so, or just once in their life they just happen to do this one thing that now gives them a weapon against the protagonist. And also, inside of all that, I agree with what Steve said, that Layla don't learn nothing. But also, and this will take me to the first topic I want to talk about. Also, what I don't get is, and I'm just going to be a little raw here, why in the world you letting somebody else tell you about your marriage? I don't understand that. I don't know. I don't know if that's a me thing or a culture thing. I don't get it, because stuff like that in my life gets stopped at the door. You don't talk to me about my kids. You don't talk to me about, you worry about your house. How about that? How about you take care? When my kids were coming up, when I take my son with me on stuff, I would get a lot of feedback from my guy friends, my single guy friends. You should do this and you should do that. And my response was, how many sons you got? Oh, I'm sorry, 0. Okay, so you do what you want to do with your son. This one's mine. See,
I will
maybe
say,
that's just me. Maybe I'm like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that this fool hasn't done anything but try and destroy you since he met you.
I will say
making comments about your marriage, and you're listening. Why?
Yeah.
I will say the perfect example of this, and once again, it all goes back to Token, is Grima Wormtongue. Now, Grima Wormtongue puts a wedge between Theoden and his whole family, and he does it with carefully crafted lies, and innuendo. And, it just goes back to... They're the reasons, they're the classics, and the reason that these are the masters.
Yeah,
he's the masters for a reason. Tolkien.
Grandma's like what's his name from Othello?
Yeah,
Iago.
Iago.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Iago.
But I wonder sometimes if these writers, these people have read, and it doesn't mean you have to copy Shakespeare, you have to copy Tolkien, but these people knew how to craft stories, tell stories. They understood people, and that's why it's important to read this stuff. I mean, I get on my soapbox just for a second, but I was an engineer, and so many times I heard people say that English literature was a waste of time for engineers. It's like, man, English literature lets you understand people because it gives you a glimpse into the soul, so.
Okay, now I just made a tweet about that, the Superman and Batman and Kingdom Come, because they have some of the best dialogue. But those two normally have the best dialogue in DC Comics. Normally that relationship is the best one. And so in Kingdom Come, long story short, if you haven't read it, Superman came up with an idea of a superpowered gulag to capture all of the new generation of heroes that weren't being heroic. Superman didn't anticipate that turning into a powder keg. So he has to go to Batman and say, I need you to help me. And Batman is just like laughing at him like, dude, you didn't see that coming? And Superman was like, look, when you scratch away everything else from Batman, you're left with someone that doesn't want to see anybody die. That's the one thing we've always had in common. That's brilliant. That's brilliant kind of stuff. And see, if your best friend says some stuff that speaks to your deepest values, I buy that instantly. If your enemy says anything like that, my immediate response is, why are you listening to them? Why would you listen to them? Even if there's a kernel of truth, because their motives are malicious. They're going to take truth to try to destroy you with it. So why does it get past the gate of you thinking about it? So like I said, I don't know, that might just be a me thing, but that's my gut reaction. Every time a hero opens his mouth and then he's messing with Layla, and then she looks at Steven/Mark and like, well, is that the truth?
And that's precisely what he does. He tells her the truth, but he doesn't tell her the whole truth. It's a lie of omission.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I don't want to keep beating this horse, but it's like, in order to have something like that and make it work, you got to do the hard work 3 episodes ago and have Mark consistently tell her just little things that put doubt in her brain, so that it makes sense, so that when he tells her the lie of omission, she has a moment of pause, but you have to think about the character.
She does mention things like that.
Why she's listening to him in the first place, though.
I mean, she does mention in her appearances that there are reasons why she doesn't trust Mark fully, because he's always keeping secrets from her. So for me, I thought the groundwork was laid. Maybe not firmly, but it was there.
I understand what you're saying, but it goes back to show, don't tell. It's like, I agree with you, Jeff, but it's like you got to show him still doing that type of stuff, or at least flash back to a couple instances where she's just like.
Well, that is the biggest moral flaw in the original Star Wars trilogy that's finally bookended in Return of the Jedi, because Yoda and Obi-Wan never told Luke the truth. Vader told Luke the truth. So then Luke goes back to his mentors and say, why didn't y'all tell me? And Yoda finally says, because not ready for the burden were you. That's the old Smallville, I didn't tell you I was Superman because I was trying to protect you. So that's a good segue for me to get into, I'm cheating on my wife with myself. Now, we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming several episodes ago. It was just telegraphed, or maybe we've been in the game so long, but we knew this was coming. And it was kind of a funny kind of, I've seen my husband's gruff side. I've seen his lying to me side. I've seen his keeping secrets from me side. And I've seen his powerful side. And I like it when he's got the suit on, but he's not very forthcoming. But now here's this new guy that's also my husband. And this is his sensitive side. And he'll tell me the truth. And he tells me how he's feeling. And he talks to me and all that. And you could see the actors did such a good job of seeing Layla's emotions play across her face, but you can see her really warming up to Steven, and then, the kiss and everything, and then the little funny bit with I'm going to slap myself because you kissed my wife, but I am you. And so I don't know what the word is for that, thruple or whatever.
Thruple.
Something, thruple.
I hate that I know that word.
So what I found fascinating about the whole thing was it just made Stephen get on my nerves more. Because I'm like, it's always dudes like you who running their mouth about stuff. Mark had a reason. And it was Mark's stuff to tell. Not that he maybe wouldn't have told her, maybe he would have eased up on her, whatever. But when you got the villain and your other plan B self constantly running their mouth, and so then he's kind of forcing Layla into these positions, and then he gets some sympathy points, and then it's like, I want to take over the body because I love her and I love her better than you, and I treat her better than you, and I'm like, oh, dude. So I thought it was funny, but it was a little annoying for me because Stephen in general is kind of annoying. And I'm like, I don't understand. Once again, I think it's just a me thing. So, because, I try to be quick to admit my biases. I think it's just a me thing, but because I'm not that guy, I think I don't understand those guys. I don't understand dudes like Stephen who are always trying to spill somebody else's beans. I don't understand that. If somebody else is doing whatever, that's them. Okay? That's them. But here you come trying to put some stuff on blast that's not even your stuff to tell. And that means you don't even know the whole story. You don't know why he withheld the information. You don't know the blow it would have done. You don't know any of that. And now you're forcing the issue by running your mouth about something that you don't have the full information on. I'm not that guy, so that's what I mean when I say it's probably just a me thing, because I don't understand it. It just annoys me when I see it. And so I'm seeing this guy doing all this. I'm like, you're trying to curry favor with Layla. I understand that, but how do you think this is going to end? Do you think it's going to end where she's going to be like, oh, Stephen, I choose you? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think when Mark goes away that Layla's going to stay with you, or you think she's going to follow where Mark goes? Do you think you're going to have to share this body? Like, how do you think this is going to play out? And that's another thing about it that just annoyed me, because I'm like, what's the end game here? What's the end game? If you get her to hate him, she's still going to want the truth. You still have to share a body with him. He's still, got the real Moon Knight gear. He's the one that summons that one, not you. The best you got is the Mr. Knight stuff. So where do you see this going by putting all this on blast and trying to paint your personality as a better option for Layla, I guess? And then, this is going to sound funny, but I'm like, okay, she gave you a kiss. Now, if she kiss you, don't feel guilty. That's what you wanted, ain't it? That's what you was pushing for, wasn't trying to get her affection when she gave you a big old smoochy, and then you're like reacting like a little something or other. So I'm like, no, you just get on my nerves. And I can see why Mark would be, in a hurry to get rid of you, even though, as we find out later, the truth is extremely heavy. And the truth is extremely relationship changing. That's why I brought up Obi-Wan and Yoda, because Luke was in the same position. The actual truth is really heavy. It's really a game changer. You won't be the same. Your life can't go back to what it was 5 minutes before you heard it. So that's what I mean when I say when people like this are dealing with stuff like that. So I'm like, Layla, you're listening to Stephen and you're listening to Harold. So it was funny, it was cute, but it was a little bit annoying to me as well. So I want to hear what you guys think about that. Nim, start with you.
Yeah, well, first of all, this whole concept of the personalities having a go at Mark Spector's main squeeze, has happened in the comics before. I mean, Jake Lockley actually impregnated, one before and had a child, so, that was going on, and they've had their whole fights and everything. So I get that, and I get what they were trying to do. I think the annoying part comes in is that Stephen Grant, and I'm going to use a term here, is so obviously a white knight and not a white knight. He's white knighting in the worst way possible, know. And not only is he white knighting, but we know how this all ends most of the time. 95% of the time, the Stephen Grant character will white knight, and I will give him this. Unlike many white knights who are doing it and know what they're doing in order to get something from a woman. I don't think Stephen Grant's doing that. So he's going to have the other outcome of white knighting, which is he will white knight so that the main love interest changes his behavior just a little bit, and then that white knight will get put firmly in the friend zone. So that's why it's so annoying, because we've seen this story play out 100 times. We know exactly what's going on. We know how this ends. We've seen it from the time we were in middle school going forward in our lives as men, so we know exactly what the deal is and who Steven is. And this is where you take the guy out behind the back of the school and you're like, bro, what are you doing, man? Come on. So I mean, and we've had this discussion before, but yeah, he's a pure white knight character. But I will give him this: it's like he's not the male feminist white knight, and I'll just leave it at that. So we know what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, we all talking about the same thing.
It's kind of appropriate. He's a knight that dresses in white, so it all fits.
We're just talking about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Two things. First thing is, Steve Window looks like the Riddler on that slant. Look at that slant. That's like the Riddler from Batman 66. Steve needs to do all this cosplay. I see him as all these characters all the time. Like Jada the Riddler. I'm like, come on, dude.
No.
That's number one. Number two, second thing is, this was Layla Faouli Tomb Raider. That was the introduction of that show. And if they make a spinoff where she's the Tomb Raider, it's completely believable. Okay, So Steve, what do you think about this little cheating on my wife with myself?
Menage a trois with two people. Yeah. I think Nem's pretty much got this. I mean, there's no realistic expectation that this is going to go well. And I will say, though, I'm a little more forgiving of him revealing secrets in that they are technically his secrets because they are technically the same guy. But if it were somebody else's secrets, yeah, that would be probably pretty messed up. But yeah, I'm just kind of looking at this relationship and I'm seeing, yeah, she's going to get what she wants out of him, because he's the one that's going to be telling her everything that Mark really won't tell her. And then, and then once that's kind of used up, I just think that he doesn't have it in him to keep her in any meaningful way. It's just not going to go well. But at the same time, it's like this whole relationship is kind of messed up with Mark anyway. So yeah, I'm just not really seeing that this going particularly well at all. I will say though that I did like Mark and Steven arguing with themselves in the meantime. And I laughed when Mark punched Grant in the face. I just like, that was a great moment. That was kind of worth everything. Say what you want about Stephen Grant being a white knight and all these sorts of things. At least we finally get what many people have wanted, which is to see him punched in the face by Mark. So I'm just like, I'm down with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. And then from there, they just kind of moved on with it. And they didn't really get too much into it except for like little bits of bantering here and there. So the way that they played it was okay, but I don't want to see anything really come of it because I just don't think that it makes sense. And I don't think it would end well anyway. And in any case, we're talking about two people sharing a body, sharing a relationship, and that by itself is kind of complicated and kind of screwed up. In addition to Mark being screwed up anyway.
Talk about the ultimate third wheel, man. Jesus.
Yeah. So third wheel to yourself.
Yeah.
Now, as
That's
usual,
harsh.
Steve has encapsulated something that I've been trying to say, but he put it in such a succinct form, I can now express it clearly, and that is that from episode 1, Grant has had the most punchable face I've seen in a while. He got a face that just go, you just need to just be clocked right upside that face. And so what Steve said is,
and when he does, it's great. I laughed.
Finally, we got the wish fulfillment. So there's that. But also before I throw it to Bracy.
And for all our female viewers out there, just a little hint. This is how we resolve our differences, with a nice little punch to the nose every now and then. So.
Punch in the nose, and then sometimes you can be friends after the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just had to
Stay away from my wife.
That's
Let's-
the reset button, though.
Let's just say that men, unlike ladies, we don't have frenemies.
Yeah.
We either have enemies or we get over it.
Yeah.
Right. So very true. But the other thing before I throw it to Bracy on this whole situation also is that one of the clearer things about what they're doing is, how can I put this? Which life is going to be dominant? Because if I was Layla, or if I was in the same kind of situation, so let's reverse the genders and let's say I have a wife with DID, and so I've got one version of her that's the Tomb Raider, then I've got another version of her that's much more talkative, much more vulnerable, much more forthcoming about how she feels, but I know there's two different personalities. So long term, do you want that? Do you want to be dealing? Because that's what I'm thinking as Layla's looking at this thing. She's just now coming into the understanding of what's been going on with her husband, who is Mark. And so I'm like, long term. Now I know some people can make the case that some people they might have dated or be married to are actually bipolar, but that's, it's something else. But I'm saying, we're facing that kind of life, again, what does that look like? Never quite knowing maybe who you're dealing with, or maybe never quite knowing the full truth about things, or I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is it does not feel like a situation anymore where trust would be at the core of it. And so maybe Layla is, in there to get the answers that she needs, and then we'll see what happens there.
I'm also curious what Jeff has to say.
I do have some background on this.
What do you think Stephen thinks his place of primacy and his moral standing vis-a-vis Mark is as well? Because I know what my thoughts are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing before we answer that, I want to throw it out. We've seen this before. Remember, this is how Lois and Clark and Superman met. If you know anything about way back in the early issues, Lois fell in love with Superman. Lois wouldn't think about Clark, and she made that clear over and over again. And Clark was always like, "Why can't you like me like this?" And Lois is like, "La la la, dude, you're a loser. I don't even see you, but the man is still something different." So Clark, those were back in the days when Superman used to break the fourth wall and wink at the audience at the end of every adventure. So we have seen this. I'm competing with myself. Okay, go ahead, Bracy.
Yeah, first of all, in the immortal words of Chef, you and me, simultaneous loving, baby. 2 or 3, you and me, simultaneous loving, baby. Come on. Now, with that musical interlude out of the way, let's get into the psychology of this a little bit. First of all, one thing we have to remember, and it can be played differently in media, but at the end of the day, every split personality is still that person. So, Stephen is an aspect of Mark Spector. He's the antithesis of Mark, because Mark, I believe, there's a part of him that wants to run away from his bloody, violent lifestyle, that wants to be open and honest, that just wants to have the wonder of life. This guy expresses so much wonder, particularly in this episode. I love seeing that in Stephen. Stephen's a geek, and I respond to that as a geek myself. And, I have that aspect, whereas the other part of me is very macho and manly, like Mark. I'm ex-military. I was big into martial arts for years. I did a lot of rough and tumble things that I thought were cool and fun, and often painful. But, they're kind of manly things to do, and I had fun doing it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But there's that other side of me that's, soft and soppy. And I've been that white knight in high school. I was so Mr. Nice Guy, so Mr. Good Guy. I'll sit across from the table from my wife when we're at a restaurant, and I'll just stare at her. That's just how in love I am. And I'll just tell her, you're making me feel mushy. So that part of me is still there. And it's as much Stephen's secret to tell as it is Mark's, because they are the same person. And I think that's the aspect of Mark that would like to divulge that secret. So I don't see that as the betrayal that DT does. Now, it is funny watching him try and be the White Knight, try and be the good guy, and then a scene later, still going like, well, yeah, it's just you and me in the open road, and it's like, okay, there, Casanova wannabe, you're trying to make the play. So, just when I think you're a total White Knight, you show that you're still a guy, because guys will sometimes do that. Like, yeah, man, your girlfriend's looking kind of good. I know we got bro code and all, but don't mess up around me because she might be looking for another option. So that sort of thing happens because that's how we are, men and women. There's sexual competition. There's things like that. So Layla is still Steven's wife, more Mark's wife, but they're still the same person. Now, getting into the psychology of it, and like the point you brought up, which was very interesting, where can this possibly go? It can't go anyplace good now as it is. And as we'll see, a spoiler in the future, Layla doesn't move in with them by the end of the series. So that's up in the air. That's because it's a lot of process that you've got two people, and we even get a confirmation in a couple of episodes that they are sharing a soul. So they're still one person, even though they're two individual personalities. And that's very complicated. There was a really interesting case. I can't remember if it was DID or if it was a different mental disorder, where this woman would wake up and she wouldn't remember that she was married to her husband. She thought she had a different life, different experience. And whenever this happened, her husband had to remind her, it was like, yes, I'm your husband. We've had this life together. Look, here's our wedding photos. And man, that's just heartbreaking just to hear it. I couldn't imagine being the therapist and like having to talk with these people about that. Just amazing situation there. And it's like you said, what are you going to do? How are you going to work this relationship? Steven's not going to want to be left out. There was a really great episode of Moonlighting back in the 80s, which is Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd.
Great show.
And yeah, and Bruce, of course, is like super manly man. And when Sybil got pregnant in real life, they worked it into the show. Well, one of the things she was trying to figure out what to do about it. Should we get married? What's a relationship going to be like? Because things change when you have a child. And she had this fantasy where this other actor, I can't remember, like not Pat Sajak, some other guy named Pat, who's known for like playing the super clean cut, super nice, family.
Mark Harmon.
No, not Mark Harmon, not the rival. She had a fantasy. She had a fantasy about this guy who's like super clean cut, super family, super Mr. Rogers kind of character actor, and she was calling him David. Bruce Willis's character's name, like David. And he's like, oh, honey, I made you some breakfast. And he's wearing like the little Cosby sweaters and he's doing all the perfect stuff. But then as night fell, outside the house, she sees Bruce Willis as David Addison. And he tears the door open. He runs over there and starts ravishing her because that's what she wanted. She wanted the man who was like so sexually charged and so manly and everything. But as somebody who is now a mother, she also wanted this other thing. And her conflict was, he will become that to satisfy me because that's how much he loves me. But like, I still want this guy too. I don't want this guy to go away. And so that's going to be Layla's problem here. There's things that she sees in Steven that she really likes. And she even makes the comment, she's warming up to the idea because she's like, you look like him. Other than your accent, you sound like him. You smell like him. So she's still seeing her husband, even if it's a different personality. But how far can she take that? I don't think you can take that very far because there's going to be complications, and there's definitely going to be complications with the personalities. And the big problem with DID, especially if you have more than one personality, we've all got things going on in us. No matter how good you are, you might have some deep, dark stuff, and we get to find out, Jake Lockley, we've had little hints. Jake Lockley's a very bad man. We think Stephen Grant's the killer. Jake Lockley is like the Jason Bourne, to his Mark Spector. He's a rough, tough, scary dude by the looks of things. And Who knows what else is in there? We don't know how far the show is going to go. We've got the comic books to go by, but they've already made a few changes with Layla. So you don't know how deep that rabbit hole is going to get. And if you start to work things out between the two of them and yourself, then what happens when personality number 3 pops up? Personality number 4. What if you end up like Jason McAvoy and Split? Then you've got a whole bag of crazy to deal with, and you're like, what did I get myself into? Now, in the real world, husbands and wives have made these things work out of just sheer love and devotion. But there's also been plenty of relationships where it destroyed the couple. It destroyed families. And that's at least 50%, if not a much higher percentage of the cases. So I don't hold up a lot of hope unless this relationship's going to have plot armor.
Yeah, well, this is a whole long discussion, but I mean, that whole point you're making is so well founded. But this is millions of years of human, social, evolution, going in. We like to think we're different animals, but we're not. And now it goes back to, the differences between the married men and single men, and the changes that happen in you whether you want to or not, and why married men live longer than single men. And generally, I mean, there's just a whole host of discussions that go on there, but it's all true.
Yeah, it's all like all these factors there, from biology to societal mores. It's all there.
Yeah,
and it's so ingrained in us. When you throw a monkey wrench like this in, it's something very few people can survive intact.
Yeah.
Well, again, I completely agree with what Nemesis said, that this is well founded. But also, I have to just throw this little bit in, and then we'll move on. I could be wrong, and you guys feel free to correct me, but it feels very much to me like a bit of a trauma bond.
Yeah.
Just with the reveal of why Mark is actually in Layla's life, feels like a bit of a trauma bond. It's really, when you're on an adventure with someone, there's something about that. I can't even put it in words, but there's something about that can bond you. But the question becomes, when you come off that adventure and life slows down, or maybe the scenes of your life change, do you still want to be with them?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point. Like you see the sort of thing happen in the military too, where you get into high pressure, dangerous situations. People hook up like crazy. And because that adrenaline's pumping, you want to feel alive, you want to feel some sort of safety, some sort of bond, some sort of connection. And that makes me think of the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Jolie and Brad Pitt, how they were so attracted to each other when they were out having their adventure, and then they settled into married life and they got bored. And until they each discovered they were a secret agent, they didn't find the spark again.
Well, this also goes back to what we were talking about with too few episodes and them not exploring the genesis of her distrust of Mark. And it goes back to the fact that Mark is, or at least he feels he's responsible for the death of her father, then somehow seeks her out and ends up in a relationship with her and then marries her. Something happened there that's very
dealing with that whole thing.
Yeah.
What's that?
You said we need an episode that explores all that.
Dealing with that. Because, I mean, again, it goes back to telling and not showing. It would have worked a lot better if we had seen Mark go out there with Bushman, watching the disillusion of Mark and Bushman, Bushman killing the father, and Mark, doing what he could to save her, and whatever it is that he was doing out there. We needed to see that.
Talk about a messed up situation, a situation that is not a healthy one to start a relationship on, where out of a sense of guilt and duty, he seeks out the daughter and then ends up marrying her. That's just not good.
This to me, this of Clark on Smallville, because once again, what Mark did was actually selfish to the extreme.
Yeah.
He's
probably grateful Khonshu gave him an out.
Right. We know you feel guilty about what happened. We know that if you could have done anything to make things go down differently, you would have. We know that this is not how you expected things to turn out. We get all that. But you got into a romantic and a marital covenant with this woman, driven by that, and you never really told her why. And see, that's actually selfish.
And if you had a friend who knew all this, they should call you out and say, dude, you, instead of owning your failure and as like a man to her, you are are you being her guardian by marrying her under false pretenses, basically?
I'll make it even more messed up if you would like. The fact that he died and came back, let's just say that I'm pretty sure that contributed to the attraction. Because when you're dealing with those kinds of situations, the libido is high.
True.
I got it.
But I
I got to
don't
hand
know.
it to.
Would I want to be married to a woman and she gets all mysterious on me, and a couple years into the relationship, she says, "Well, I killed your dad," or "I feel like I killed your dad," or "I was there when your dad got killed, and the only reason I came to find you was because of that." A whole thing would change with me.
Yeah, I was like, what am I supposed to do with that? So,
Right.
And then, and one last thing, like what do you do if one of the personalities falls in love with somebody else?
Oh well.
How do you work all that out? That's a kettle of
There's
fish.
that whole thing. That's
You know
true.
the best movie that dealt with
Free
that,
company.
and then they reveal that it's two different people, but The Prestige.
Yes. Brilliant
So-
movie. Brilliant movie. Go watch it.
Yeah.
The Prestige, yeah. So there are all kinds of issues here, and again, the good part is that it's so multi-layered and there's just so many things to explore. But the rough part is we don't really get to see any of these key pivotal scenes that they're talking about, which would help us greatly as an audience connect to the characters, love them or not, like them or not. We need to see these because these are the life-changing, character-shaping moments that made them who they are as we meet them in this series. So that's a good transition to the next part, and we're still actually talking about the beginning. We're going to talk about the little the mummy sequence, which I thought was cool and scary and funny, and I could have taken a whole hour of stuff like that, to be honest with you. At some point, it also, and maybe this is just the old school in me, it felt a little Scooby-Doo. The part that Scooby-Doo, see, okay, whenever you hear that phrase, let me explain to you what I mean by that.
It's
You're talking about old school Scooby-Doo.
Right. See, when a plot has been Scooby-Doo, this is what happens. It means that out of all the possible answers, you always pick the right ones and the right combination and put it all together in a matter of seconds. That's Scooby-Doo in a plot. And so, her weapon of choice is fireworks. Okay. I thought that was kind of okay, but then they just go straight to the tomb, and the whole fight this whole time has been about getting to the tomb, and they're just like, la, 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 okay. And then, oh, surprise, it happens to be Alexander the Great's long lost tomb because we haven't found that. Because, oh, wait, he was an avatar. Wait, his little statue, Ahmed statue thing is down his throat. So I got to crawl up in here and break the joint, and there it is. And so I was like, that was cool. That was fun. That's little Scooby-Dooish because every leap that you made was the right one. If you watch the Scooby-Doo cartoons, it's about 75% of the way through when they're trying to figure out the identity of the monster, villain, killer. They make a series of leaps that you have to make, and they all have to be right for it to work. That's how they solve every mystery. And so that's kind of what happened here. I'm like, you throwing all this together and blah, 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 we got this. And so we know, because we've been in the game a long time, that when they write a too obvious, easy triumph, the grits are finna hit the pan. So we know if it looks like y'all warned it, it's going to be a Quicksilver moment. But somebody finna die. It's going to be one of those moments where everything's looking good, and a truck comes out of nowhere and kills the love of your life, and something like that gonna happen. So we knew that was coming, but it was still fun to watch. But I was intrigued by the Imhotep type of bringing these creatures back and fighting, because of all the classic monsters, the mummy is my favorite. So the idea of, not just the jackals, but, these reanimated priests, and like, what does that mean? And how do you kill something that's dead? Do you dismember it? Do you turn it back to dust? That kind of thing. So watching them fight and dealing with all that, and the idea of, because inside of a pyramid or any type of Egyptian tomb is a maze, it's catacombs. So the idea of maybe not knowing where to go, or maybe not knowing where those things can go, and are they vulnerable to water? And it was a whole video game in my mind. So I really, really enjoyed it, even though it did get kind of Scooby-Dooish, but oh well. So I really like that, and it made me realize that stuff like that, along with more battle scenes with Moon Knight, I wanted more of. I wanted more of from this series, seeing stuff like that, because rarely do you get to see. I mean, it was one of Tom Cruise's rare missteps, but he did the Mummy because they were going to do the whole Dark Universe thing, and that movie didn't go at all. And so that's a rare misstep by Cruise. But this episode, I think, kind of got more right in terms of that whole lore, and I really loved it. And so I was like, we need to see some more of this. We need to dive into some more of this. So even though, like I said, all that stuff at the end, which ends with the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the gunshots and the transitions. But for right now, let's just talk about the Mummy whole sequence of this part. You know, what did you think about that? Fun, funny, corny? What were your thoughts? Nims, I think you were saying something, so you go ahead and start.
Sure. My comments, I agree with what you were saying. I thought this was great. Like I said, it definitely had that Tomb Raider or Mummy, Brendan Fraser Mummy vibe to it. I loved it. The thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to give kudos to Disney here, is that this is how you do R-rated material in a PG or PG-13 setting.
Yes.
They didn't have to show it, but by giving us the sounds or whatever, we knew what was going on, and it made it scarier and built suspense. This was a legitimately suspenseful scene.
Yes.
And so, I got to give them credit for that. And I hope that they learn a lesson, because there's plenty in Marvel that is deserving of suspense and genuine a horror feel, but you don't have to go full R-rated slasher film to get that same feel, because that's not what Marvel and Disney is aiming to do. So don't do it, but do this. This was good. So that's my comment, really. It was just that the way they set this up, the way they built the suspense, let us know what was going on without showing us what was going on, added to the whole flavor of the scene as a whole, and I was there for it. I thought it was really good.
One of the, and I'm going to throw it to Bracy, one of the draws or best parts or whatever of both the Predators and the Xenomorphs is the way they attack, not the fact they attack. Predators attack with technology that just outclasses yours. So whatever it is you think you have on Earth, they have tech that's far above it. They even have metals that we don't have on the periodic table. Xenomorphs always flank you, but they flank you 360 degrees, kind of like rappers. So whatever xenomorph you see here, they're coming from behind you or underneath your feet or to your sides or all of that at once. And they just put one out there to make you focus, to make you stand still long enough for the facehuggers or for the warriors to get to you. And so that's always fascinating to me, how even as people, we can fight back to back, we can fight in a circle, but can we fight 360? That just amazes me. And so that's what I mean when I say all of that is running through my head in this. And I think it has so much potential. And I could watch a whole episode of them just running through the catacombs, finding challenge after challenge along the line. Okay, Bracy, so what did you think about the whole Mummy sequence?
Just a quick aside on the Predator Xenomorph thing. What I love about the two of them is they are like the ultimate stealth predators, but in different ways. Because one is stealthy via technology, and the other one just completely blends into industrial or organic, bioorganic settings. And neither one can be picked up, on scanners or eyes because of either their technology or the composition of their bodies. So really cool stuff. It's part of what makes them really scary. And like you said, they get you in different ways, but they're still stealthy mofos. Okay, now I love this so much because I'm a huge horror aficionado. And like Nemesis said, this is how you do horror right. And we've complained before about too many people getting into Joss Whedonisms when they write. Now, here's one thing, a lesson to take away. Go back and watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Go back and watch Angel. And yeah, it's campy, it's snarky, it's fun, it's action, it's adventure, but it's also legitimate horror. And Whedon knew how to squeeze horror into a TV show with TV audiences, figuring that some kids are going to end up watching it. If you watch the wonderful episode, my favorite, with the gentleman, which Joss wanted to homage silent films, which is why he took away everybody's voice in Sunnydale. Absolutely brilliant, because part of your vocabulary as a storyteller in film is your dialogue, and he writes as well as directs, and he took that away from himself. He wanted to challenge himself to be scary without any words, just with images. And I love this so much because I love the fact, one, that Disney didn't shy away from it. Two, this episode encapsulates everything that has been great about this series, and taking it back to Alien, this reminds me of Aliens very much as well, where it's such a wonderful hybrid. You have this action, you have this adventure, you have the Tomb Raidering, you have the platform jumping, if you will. You have the adventure, you have the romance, you have the comedy, but you also have the horror. And this was a really well thought out, well put together sequence. Those mummies were legitimately frightening. And from a filming standpoint, I really love the setup when the angle of Leia just ducked down behind the altar, and the mummy's doing his work over here. You hear the sounds, and we see him, something you can't see in the hand, but you see it dripping, and he drops it into the Copic jar, like a canoptic jar, and it's just fantastic. And when he hears Steven, they don't do the Spider-Man wall crawling that they did in the Brendan Fraser mummy, but they kind of homage it a little bit when he jumps up to the platform and you see his fingers grip through the floorboard. Steven's looking down and he's watching these fingers creep their way to the edge. I love that sequence so much. And then the arms come up, and it kind of reminded me of The Ring. The arms come out of the TV first, and so here are the arms coming up before the rotted head comes up. Fantastic sequence. I love that they did it. I really, even though I know she's got to make it to the end of the series, I love Layla's whole deal, trying to fight these things off. And I did not expect her to get snatched into the dark hole. And I was like, oh, crap. How's she going to get out of this? And she gets out by fighting tooth and bloody nail and managing to triumph the only way she can against a reanimated priest. Is she doesn't have the tools it takes to apparently destroy the body. We hear Arrow's men, they must have wasted so many bullets. And we even see that they're not all making it out, trying to cut these things to get to pieces with machine gun fire. She has to throw it and herself into a crevasse and try not to end up at the bottom of this, however deep this thing goes down. And she manages to do it. And again, this series gives us a believable action heroine. She's not one punching mummies. She is struggling for her life, and she's succeeding, and we cheer every time she does. And I cannot get over how good an actress this woman is, because later, I'm sure we'll get into how she gets to talking with the Harrow and her earlier interactions with Steven. She's so good. Every emotion that plays across her face, I believe. And so when she was afraid, I was afraid for her. She makes me believe it. She sells it. She is in the moment. So it all works to a T. And I could have watched a whole movie about these guys tomb raiding in this lost tomb, and it being more a horror movie than, or an action horror. I'd have been in. I was like, here's my $7. Let's get it. Give me my popcorn, my drink. I'm down. Let's do it.
Jeff, I think you hit it. This is believable. Out of so many of the different kinds of things like this that we've seen, this one gives you a feeling of immersion.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it. This is really happening. Okay, Steve, what do you think? Mummy sequence. Oh.
Yeah, this was excellent. I would agree with everybody on this one. One thing that hasn't been pointed out quite as much is how well the scene is established in terms of implying violence without actually showing it. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is how they're showing, oh, there's blood over here, and there's little bits and entrails and things like that. You don't quite see the bits, but you see just enough to know that there was some human sacrifice going on that table. And it's just this is stuff that would have been treated pretty harshly if it had been directly shown. Think of like Temple of Doom, for example. Where you're seeing like Indy's heart getting ripped out of him, that kind of thing.
And the
Vol
building
around
of
ripping
the
people's hearts out.
anticipation.
Yeah.
We keep
building the
waiting for the
anticipation,
shoe to drop the whole time.
Yeah. And we don't necessarily see that, but you can imagine what ended up happening on that table. Just showing the priest going in, it's very Lovecraftian. I think the way you start seeing the evil priest, you kind of hovering over the table and cackling and all of these sorts of things. It's all these little details that really make this sort of scene seem horrific. And so then that establishes the threat. So when Mick Halawi as Layla has to fight this thing, you realize she is in real trouble with this. And once again, it kind of shows her versatility as a character. Because one of the things that I love is that when Moon Knight is Mark, she is the brains, and when he's Stephen Grant, she is the brawn. And so you get to see her going through the Lara Croft motions, fighting this thing. Because right now, Stephen's the one trying to figure out what's going on, in the tomb and all of these things, which is his element, which is where he should be, and all of that. I will also give credit. There is none of the Disney humor in any of this.
Yes.
Like, this is one of the things where they have really stumbled in previous episodes, which is, doing the whole woo 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 thing with Stephen Grant as Mr. Knight and, haha, and playing this Disney slapstick. There is none of this in this episode, and that is great. We get to see focus more on the action. We're taking it seriously, and we're not being taken out of the experience by these jokes that are unnecessary and don't land. Where we have seen jokes, they work for the character and the moment, like with Mark punching Steven in the face. That was a really good moment, and it's just kind of light, quick, move on. But when we're in the fight, it's intense. The fear is palpable. You get all of these cliffhanger moments, these Indiana Jones moments where she goes over the cliff, and you think that, okay, maybe she's gone over. Where did she land somewhere? How did she survive? And then you see her clawing up, pulling herself up to the cliff. Straight out of Last Crusade, but it works. It's just absolutely really, really good. So, as a fan of those kinds of high adventure cliffhanger type stuff, I enjoyed it. Mixed in with the horror, it works. The horror is definitely one of the elements that's consistent with the series, but mixing it in with the action, as they have done here, I would love to see more of this kind of stuff. In fact, this is what for the longest time I've wanted to see in a Moon Knight comic.
Yeah.
I want to see, those kinds of scenes where, he's fighting, mummies in these tombs and doing all of these things, because what other hero is equipped to do that in the same way that Moon Knight is? But seeing Layla do it, it's just as good. And she's a character that we root for, that she's a character that we've grown to like. She's not over the top, she's not overridden in any way like we've seen in other characters. I mean, it's just, the whole thing works really, really well. Top-notch work by Disney on that particular scene.
I'd like to add one last thing about the creature design that I thought was incredibly well thought out. The mummies, you can see, don't have eyes. The eyes have either been plucked out or they've dried up and gone away. So what do these things do? Something I've never seen mummies do, but it's so appropriate because they have this subterranean setting. They echolocate their way around the temple. I thought that was brilliant. And another great thing to add is the anticipation of danger coming forward.
I also want to give a shout out real quick to the actress. It is difficult to play scared and intense without either looking blasé about it or looking too scared, too intense, over dramatizing it. It's difficult for it to come off as genuine. And she has that ability to play this character in stressful, high stress situations and look like she is a real human being in those situations. And that can't be overstated how difficult a skill that is.
She's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, she does not overact and she doesn't underreact either. So.
With that last thing Steve said about how wanting to see this in a Moon Knight comic for a while, and we've all said how we could take a lot more of this. I think it's a testament to everything you're saying about how well it was done, from the creature design to her reactions
Yeah.
And in the scene, just brilliant, just more. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so next we go to the next major event in the episode, and this is the event. This is the make or break event. Remember, I told you every story and sometimes every episode in a series, if the episode is well written, it has a make or break moment. It has a moment to where you're either going to buy into where it's going or what they're selling you, or it's going to completely push you out of the narrative. So when you're a writer, as we all are, many times you have to take those chances. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But there is no story that's a story of greatness that doesn't have make or break moments. You're either going to buy it and go along with that ride, or you're just going to be like, what just happened? And you're going to disconnect. Okay? So it's just like everything else in life: high risk, high return, low risk, low return. So the make or break moment here is after they have the little fight and after they have their victory, which we all knew wasn't going to last. I mean, you're holding your breath watching him with the statue. You're like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, trouble finna happen. So, but they have a scuffle, and then Mark gets shot. He'll get shot, and at first you want to say, is he shot, or is he, shot? I'm going to recover shot, or is he kind of dead? Is he partially dead? Is he Superman after Doomsday dead, or is he dead? And then what happens after that? I mean, because that's totally in line with the mythos, with the Moon Knight character, that kind of thing, the whole death and resurrection thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens after that is we go into the scenes supposedly in his mind where we are in the mental hospital, and now the characters that we've seen in the show up to this point are now showing up in different roles. It was very much a 12 Monkeys moment for me. So when we get in there, now we've shifted into did you imagine the whole thing? Is Harold really a villain, or is he just your therapist and you just imagined? It's like same thing with Dorothy at the Wizard of Oz, because Dorothy was like, all this happened to me, and IDM was like, what are you talking about, Dorothy? And she's like, well, you were there, and you were this, and you did this, and you did that. And everybody's just looking at her like, well, maybe that was in your head, maybe not. And so they go into is this all in his head mode heavily. And cliffhanger turning point is him getting shot and dying right there on the floor. So this is the make or break moment for the episode and perhaps the series. What happens once we get into the hospital, like I said, is all the other characters show up, but also we have a moment where Mark and Steven meet. And it's a very, very poignant moment. It's like two long lost brothers maybe coming face to face for the first time, something that couldn't happen any other way but this way, because they share a body. So, and then we have the biggest, hint, hint, wink, wink of all. We see a third coffin, a third sarcophagus, and somebody's trying to get out of that too. And we're like, yeah, well, we know who that is. Mm-hmm. So from this point on, the episode is about dealing with them navigating that landscape and what that means for their future, and for them understanding and working out their differences. And so for me, it left me, because by episode's end, we meet, I keep forgetting her name. What's her name, Steve?
Are you talking about Layla, or?
No, the goddess, the hippo goddess.
Towerette, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So we meet her at the end, Towerette, right. We meet her at the end, and so at the end of all these shenanigans, at the end of all of their run around and all this different kind of stuff, and them, seeing different things in different perspectives while they're in the psychiatric ward / mindscape setting. And so for me, it left me feeling like, what kind of ending are we going to rush to? Because now we've kind of fully committed to the is it real, is it in your mind idea. But it felt like, and I could be wrong, it felt like it lost a little bit of the gravitas. I loved the mummy stuff we just talked about. I loved everything about Mark coming face to face with the truth about his past with his wife. Even though Stephen was annoying in it, the moment was a powerful moment because it makes you reevaluate your relationship. I loved all that, even though with the Scooby-Doo parts and everything. But now it's like, is this more of a joke scape? Is it more of a real scape? Is it, are you a really crazy scape? And so so what I'm trying to say is I wasn't sure as we were going what the final tone of the series was supposed to be and how the taste it was supposed to leave in my mouth, because this is episode 4, we only have 2 more left. So I wasn't sure where they were going when they took this turn. So on the one hand, as both a writer and an audience member, I like the character study of the different personalities having to navigate a situation together and deal with their differences. I like that. But on the other hand, it took me out a little bit of the cool Tomb Raider mummy adventure setting we were just in. And that was such a massive shift in tone until I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. I wasn't quite sure. I was like, oh, okay, so we're doing this now. You know what I mean? And one of the biggest problems with, let's say, Iron Man 3, Iron Man 3 undercuts all of his heavy moments with humor. At the end of almost every serious moment, his armor falls apart. And that's supposed to be kind of a slapstick, he's not Iron Man, he's a Tin Man kind of thing. But after a while, it undercuts any type of gravitas the movie might have had, especially when you get the big reveal, spoiler alert, about the Mandarin. Especially when we hear the toilet flush, he's coming out the bathroom, and he's like, I'm just a dude. Yeah, really? Okay. This felt a little bit like that to me. Not that extreme, but like, so I don't know. So I felt ambiguous, and I don't like feeling that way. I felt unsure as to how to feel with all this stuff because I'm not quite sure where we're going anymore. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the point of the writing, to keep that ambiguity high, to keep us hooked to the end to see how it played out. But I was happy with the revelations about Layla's father and them coming Mark and Layla coming face to face with the truth about their past in the meeting, and about getting Amit out here and what she would look like in 3 dimensions, and about Harold finally getting what he had wanted, and about, setting up, because it was obvious when Mark dies, when they get shot, or Stephen dies, I forgot who was in command when the bullets hit, but it was obvious. Okay, it was obvious with that turn of events that he's going to have to decide to become Moon Knight again. And so they also set it up to where the door is now open for maybe Layla to do it. Because that's also been a running thing that Khonshu's been after her, and Mark's been trying to run interference because he doesn't want that life for her. But that was also kind of a cliffhanger, kind of a unresolved note, if you will, to say, well, if Mark is out of the picture long enough, maybe Layla will take Khonshu up on that offer. See, I loved everything up to that point. And then I'm crazy man in the psych ward, and, I made up all these people, and it's 12 monkeys and Oz, and he's real. I don't know. So that was just me. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts, because I really was feeling ambiguous by episodes in, and then especially when she says, hi, that was a Joss Whedon moment. I was like, that's something Whedon would do. Get something that you're scared to death, you're screaming your and it's got this squeaky voice and it's funny. So tell me what you thought. Start with Steve.
Yeah, I feel like this whole episode, or at least the last quarter of the episode, kind of suffers from the time management things that we've talked about. They've left out things that could have been in the episode, and you could have focused more on the Tomb Raider stuff, and let that be, like, the Tomb Raider be the whole episode. All you needed to do was bring in some flashbacks with Bushman, maybe a little bit of Harrow as a avatar, something that kind of fleshes out sort of those things, and then end it with Mark getting shot and then waking up in an asylum, and you could leave it there as that as your Wham moment. I don't necessarily have a problem with the Wham moment that they left it with, but it's a very different kind of one. And I think it kind of leaves it where you have totally two very different episodes between the Tomb Raider stuff and between the weird Asylum stuff where they're trying to figure out what's going on. And honestly, some of that stuff could probably have worked better for the next episode leading into it, so that the whole episode could be okay. This is about Mark figuring out what's going on. Just trying to see what happened. Is all this real or is this not real? But at the same time, I think what we do see for what it is perfectly reasonable. It's perfectly interesting. I will say one thing that I thought was really kind of cool, and that is that Ethan Hawke as the Doctor looks like Stan Lee. The glasses look like Stan Lee. I mean, he has the mustache like Stan Lee. The hair is like Stan Lee. And the way that he dresses with the sweater and the pants and like that, I mean, that's kind of the kind of stuff that Stan Lee used to wear.
I did not think about that.
Me either.
Nice.
So Ethan Hawke is channeling Stan Lee, and I love that he did that. I mean, that absolutely shows that this guy is into the roles that he's doing. Ethan Hawke is one of those actors that definitely gets into the roles that he plays, and he takes every project he does seriously. I feel like he did that here, even with this Doctor, who probably is not going to be around for longer than one more episode. I mean, the fact that he did that, I have and put that much effort into making that Doctor work, and then making him such a Stan Lee homage, I have to give massive thumbs up for that. That was really, really interesting. As far as the other stuff with the Asylum, I mean, some of the stuff that we've kind of seen before, and yeah, they pulled this one straight from the Jeff Lemire run, which kind of dealt with the same issues. And there was also a little bit of a 12 Monkeys vibe with it, which I think also works for this character. So I'm not really against that whole notion. I just feel like some of the stuff is kind of given to us maybe a little bit too soon, and maybe should have been saved for the next episode. But I mean, I'm kind of glad that we see Mark kind of get out of the situation. It's nice to see him reunite with Stephen Grant, and it's nice that at the end of the day, even though they may hit each other and they may have like these arguments with each other. I mean, at the end, you sort of see like they're willing to accept each other to a certain extent by that point, and I feel like at this point it's nice to see that. And I have to say the way that they did the CGI with the two Oscar Isaacs looked very, very good. I had no problem with any of that. None of that took me out. The tower bit was funny. No complaints about that. It's just really, I think the problem is, less the content and more how they're pacing this episode, and the fact that they really needed more than 6 episodes to do this series. And once again, Disney needs to stop doing the 6-episode format thing, because every time they do this, it just messes everything up. And we've seen that on other shows, not just on Marvel. Also with some Star Wars shows, we've seen the same thing. Jokes are both a blessing and a curse, like Knight's curse. Yeah, I guess that is true. Definitely, we start seeing that. But and all in all, it was fun. It's just a little disjointed, and I kind of feel like it could have been refined and made better if they had the room to do it. But unfortunately, they weren't able to like get a 7th episode or even 8. So yeah, it is what it is.
All right, Nims, what did you think about everything that happens post Bullets and into the Mindscape?
Yeah, you know what? I have to put a caveat on this, that I may be doing a lot of the work for the episode in the series, because first of all, this is right out of not only Jeff Lemire, but the book series that I won't name that I love so much. But it also, it has to do a lot with how the concept of the Egyptian afterlife of the Duat is presented in modern fiction, And so to me, this made perfect sense, especially him, because, afterlife, him dying, he's creating something that lets him get to terms on what his perceived reality is. And I think it's really deep that Mark Spector is more comfortable thinking that he is insane and in an insane asylum when in his version of the afterlife, or this part of his journey to his ultimate judgment in the afterlife, rather than having to deal with the fact that he's the plaything of Egyptian gods. However, reality is staring him in the face. whether he wants it to or not. His subconscious is at work even here. So when he's in the doctor's office, you're seeing all the Egyptian iconography and the statues and all the other stuff. So he can't escape it even then. And so I think that's really interesting, including the sarcophagus with, Jake Lockley. We know, I'm going to say the name. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'll be that guy. Jake Lockley's locked in there. We know it. Everybody knew it.
We do not speak his name.
Yeah. So, and him meeting himself, I think is a dead giveaway that, this is not, at that point, yes. When you first do it, you're kind of like, was it all in his head? But when he meets himself, you realize that he's not crazy in the traditional sense. This is going on in his head in the afterlife. And then the final bit I'll say with the hippo goddess, that was straight out of that series, and I loved it, and I thought it was cute because I love that series. But I think that the whole point of that was to get the reaction, which is what WTAF just happened, as you're preparing to go into episode 5. So you've had this whole thing. You've been thrown on a mind bender, like Comic Crusaders just said, drugs are a hell of a blessing and a curse. You've been thrown on this mind bender when all of a sudden he's in an insane asylum, and then they're talking hippo, and you're left at the end of the episode going, what the actual F? And if you watch this in real time without streaming it, you're like, yeah, now I got to wait a whole week to find out what is going on here. Did someone just eject me with LSD or something? So, so I didn't mind it, but at the same time, someone who is not familiar with these different concepts or hasn't read these things or just doesn't particularly like the style of storytelling, I can see how it could be a little bit of a jarring and grating and take you out of the mood of what was established earlier as well. Because it really is a very 180 mood shift. It's all of a sudden it's like, and now for something completely different. And so,
Yeah.
It does have that feel.
All right, Bracy, thoughts about everything that happens post bullets?
All right, for Al, in the words of Rick James, I didn't say or do any of that stuff. Yeah. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. I got to go into pre-bullets for just a second, because this does bring up a couple of things that bug me. Plot convenience. They unfortunately revolve around Layla. We're going to have an argument when we clearly need to escape before the bad guys get here. That one stuck in my craw because that kind of started breaking the episode for me.
And more listening to the villain instead of doing anything else. Yeah. And,
I like how clever she was by blowing up the truck in the opening using the flare in the ammo box. But aside from that, a Browning 50 cal is going to shoot right through that doggone Jeep. There's no hiding from that. I'm sorry. You're out in the desert with no cover. The Moon Knight just ended right there. But now that that's out of the way, I'll get into the actual thing. As a filmmaker, I would have ended this episode with the shots, the fall back into the water, the drifting down through the darkness, and the promise, the hope of the light lighting him up as he was drifting slowly down to the darkness. Maybe it's not all over. There's something else going on here. That's where I would have ended it, because being familiar with the Jeff Lemire series, I knew this was likely to come up. The design for Khonshu is straight out of that particular series. And I enjoyed that because I enjoyed the comic book series that this section of the show is based on, but I didn't want it here because it is jarring. It is a huge tonal shift. I like what they're doing with it. I like because we have had this thing, even when we have proof, they're like, oh, there's other people seeing monsters. There's other people who know about the suit. But there's still a little bit of that, is it all in Steven's head? Is he crazy? And I've always kind of enjoyed that, trope in movies. They do it exceptionally well in 12 Monkeys, where Bruce Willis gets convinced that he's not really from the future. There was even a great episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where she thought she was in an asylum. The villain's trying to break her, and she's like, no, I choose to go back and help my friends. But interestingly enough, even though she goes back to the Buffyverse, if you will, to continue vampire slaying, the episode ends with her back in this other timeline reality in a catatonic state, and the doctor telling her parents, I'm sorry, we've lost her. So that's like a really cool little mind flip little moment there. It was like, oh, which was really real. So these kinds of things are really fun for me. I love this kind of ambiguity that allows you as the viewer to explore the possibilities. And it's cool to get an answer, but it's also cool not to get an answer. We, of course, eventually get an answer. I like how all the things that can contribute to his fantasy as somebody who's having delusions are in there. Again, the canoptic jars, the pyramid, the videotape of his favorite adventure movie is, Tomb Busters, like all the stuff that would have made Steven, and potentially Mark. So all that stuff is in there. This moon god heavily featured in there, and you incorporated it into your own story, didn't you, Mark? So that's all so much fun. And then there's just these slight little things like, well, you're still wearing Harrow's sandals. So, you've got this stuff. So he can't quite trust everything he's seeing, which is also a fun thing because Layla's whole deal is she can't trust Mark. So psychologically, that's all fun. Now, for me, this is where the show is going to jump the shark. And I'll get into this really heavily next episode because the next episode is probably my least favorite episode. Because this is where I feel like things get Disney-fied. It gets campy. It gets a little Batman 69. And I do not like the Hippo Goddess. And I do not like her because of her personality and her voice. I don't like the cute little, hey! I don't like that. We've heard all the other gods speak. We'll hear Amet speak later on. They're all like, they're speaking through their avatars, and they have voices of majesty and authority. And you feel their power. And she's like, oh, no. Like I said, we'll get into it next time. She's like, hi. And we're like, oh, yeah, we're going to take you to the land of the dead, blah, 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 blah. Welcome to the Disney ride, everybody. I'm like, no. And I knew when the episode ended on that, I was like, I am not going to like the next episode. Much better to end it on this cliffhanger ending like we did with Khonshu being taken away. I would have loved that. As much as I hate cliffhangers, I also love them because, it's going to keep me coming back. I've got to see what's happening next. There's real stakes, real jeopardy. But I don't like how this is going to end. I don't mind a little bit of the camp there, like, Steven and Mark both screaming, and Mark screaming like, holy crap, it's a giant hippo, and Steven screaming like, ah! That kind of thing. That's cute. That's all in character. But I cannot stand the way it ends with this 8-foot tall hippo with her little bitty girly voice, and like, no, you just, no. Where's the majesty? And as you said, DT, where's the gravitas? All the other avatars, all the other gods we've seen have gravitas, and as we will see later on, there is no gravitas in this particular goddess, and I'm going to get super annoyed with her relationship with Leia and how that goes on. As a spoiler for the next couple episodes, guys, but like it was all pretty much gravy. Even after he got shot, I still enjoyed it because I'm enjoying that segment. Still would have ended it with the shooting, but the hippo ruins it for me.
Okay,
I was all over it until then.
Jeff just said, I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them on a boat. I do not like them on a boat. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam.
I will also say, as a foreshadowing to the next episode, there is a really cool little subtle thing they do because we'll find out that we're on her ship, and the hull shifts like a boat in the sea, and you see the ceiling lights rock. And I was like, that's a nice little touch for next time. I dig that.
Okay, so to dip into that right quick, and then we're going to wrap it up. This is exactly my point, what Bracy was just alluding to. My point being, it takes a turn with this choice, and I'm not saying it wasn't necessary, and I'm not saying it wasn't right, and I'm not saying it was bad. What I am saying is that it takes a turn in tone.
Yeah.
And so we only got 2 episodes to see how that's going to play out and how that's going to wrap up and what it means. And like I said, my opinion of the series has changed retroactively. Nemesis challenged everyone with the next episode saying this episode is going to decide whether or not you really like the series or not, nature of it. And I completely agree with that. And I really liked it because it's such a tour de force of acting. In retrospect, I realize it's too long. And we spend far too much time on stuff that there's other things we should have been spending time on. But we'll talk about that next time. So the last thing I want to say, I just want to hit this topic real quick before we go. And I just want to briefly touch again on the character of Layla through all of this. We've been talking about her actors and the actress, but I want to talk about her POV, her finding out why Mark is in her life, her finding out that Mark was heavily involved in the death of her dad and that he's never been forthcoming with her about why that was going on, about her finding out, because things like that make you ask yourself, is our whole relationship a lie? Was it real? When you go through stuff like that. You know, it's like those movies where, I mean, it's a trope. It's the biggest 80s trope we have. You date someone that's a geek or a nerd on a dare. Turns out they're really hot, and y'all develop a real relationship. And then you have to tell them, I never understand why people do this, but you feel compelled to tell them, well, you know, my buds dared me to come over here and talk to you. But it's not like that now, you know. I really love you now, though, for it. I'm like, okay, how do you think she's going to react to that? So it's starting to feel a little bit like that to me with Layla, in that I'm like, how is Layla processing? Because we talked about how well the actress is communicating all that, but how is Layla processing all of this information? How is she processing that my husband has another personality that's a softer side, that's an archaeologist, and understands the hieroglyphics on the level that I do? And I find myself digging that dude. This dude talks to me. This dude cares about how I feel, as opposed to Mark. I just found out the Mark, the man I've loved for so long, and the man who I guess was trying to divorce me and I didn't want it, he stopped talking to me. The reason, or at least part of the reason, that he stopped talking to me is because he had something to do with my father's death. He never told me the truth about that. There's that going on. And then now he's shot in front of me, you know, and now have I lost him? Have I found him to lose him? That kind of thing. And so I think, again, I mean, I know we sound like a broken record, but again, we need more time. The actress is doing such a fantastic job of taking us through Layla's journey with her acting choices. So we all are in agreement. We got to give her kudos for that. But we need a little bit more time. And it's also confirmation that she is this series version of Marlene for sure. So we get that. You know, my partner got greedy and the whole thing with Bushman and that kind of thing. And so we get all that. But it's like, there's some more treasure here. There's some more stuff to be mined about what Layla would do with that information and how she would react. And I just don't think we have enough time to flesh it out. If Whedon was writing this, and let me hasten to say, I'm not talking about any of his personal antics. I'm talking only about his writing. I just want to make that clear. If Whedon was writing this, you know what Layla would do? She would turn on him. She would turn on him in the last minute, like completely unexpectedly. We all be like, what? That kind of thing, because she would just get overwhelmed. Because this is a big information dump.
She's Zoe him from Firefly.
Yeah. So I'm just really, really kind of sorry that we don't have enough time to really explore that whole thing, because that's the weight of their relationship. That's the weight of Mark's secret. That's the weight. And you talk about Firefly, you know, if you've watched Serenity, you find out that River understood how the Reavers were made, and actually the Alliance made them, and that's what she was carrying that drove her crazy. Once you get the secret out, her mind instantly normalizes. So I was having vibes like that. I'm like, now that this stuff is on the table, where is Layla with all this? I want to see that. I want to know that. I don't want them to just jump back into some kind of relationship and they haven't dealt with how you would feel with that kind of information dumped on you. You see what I mean? So really briefly, you guys tell me what you think about what I'm saying. then we'll wrap up. Bracy, what do you think?
I think this is why, and as we'll find out in the last episode, that we don't see them off together playing Happy Family or whatnot, because I feel like this is when she's going to be processing. By the end of episode 6, she's got a lot to process. But right now, she's fighting for her life. She's fighting to save the world. You kind of don't have time for that. One of my favorite lines from Siskel and Ebert is they were doing a review of Mad Max, The Road Warrior. And one of the things they brought up with is like this film did not have a romantic subplot. And they said, but it's kind of hard to have a romantic subplot at 85 miles an hour with people shooting at you. And I actually appreciate the aspect that, again, this is something that feels kind of realistic. You can see it affecting her, but at the same time, it's not something she can actively deal with right now. I will say this about both the actress and the character. We've all extolled her virtues as a performer. We all think she's magnificent. She is so good in this role, and her character is handled so well. Disney, if you made a series about Layla's adventures and you keep the writing of this character this good, I would watch that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I watched several movies of that. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Layla Tomb Raider. I'm all about it.
So, Steve, what do you think about what I'm saying?
Yeah, her entire journey. I mean, there's so much that she's having to unpack, but the real, again, I think Jeff pretty much said it. I mean, the fact is that everything's going a miles and miles a minute, and when we finally starting to get into all of this, it's just at an inappropriate time. Like the time to talk about what went on, with Bushman and in the past, and how and what happened to her father is not when they're trying to get out of the tomb and they have Harrow and his goons, pretty much bearing down on them. The time is, and here you have Mark even saying it's like, yeah, now it's not really the time to get out. We have to get out of here and all of this. And she's the one really kind of pushing this forward. And this is just kind of like one of the areas where the whole stop listening to the villain and stop believing the villain is part of it. But the other thing is, not being able to compartmentalize at least long enough to get to a place of safety and then have your conversation with Mark about what he's not been telling you and what's been going on in the past and whatnot. But yeah, how would you have fit that in? With a plot that way it is, they needed to reveal this sort of stuff at a point. So I mean, it's just it kind of feels kind of clumsy that the way that they have done it. At the same time, I really do think that May Kalamawi is a really good actress. Mm-hmm. I think that she's played this role excellently. I think she has absolutely embodied, I think, the spirit of Marlene. Even if the character is not Marlene, she's very much her own character. But I think she has, enough of the spirit of that where I can say, yeah, this is an enjoyable character to watch. This is an enjoyable actress to watch. The chemistry between her and Oscar Isaac is always good. All the, and, both for the good and the bad. I mean, you definitely see, her struggling with him. Even when they're fighting, you sort of get those moments where, she really wants to believe him, even if she can't. And, even when, things are going good, you just have that moment of doubt. It's like, can I really trust him? All of the sort of internal monologue you see in her expressions. I mean, in the way that she moves, all of this, while at the same time doing the action roles, while at the same time, being able to, do all of these plot necessary things. I mean, she really is a good total package. And yeah, I would absolutely would watch a show featuring her. Her going into into Madripoor. I would love to see that. All kinds of things that that are in the MCU that we could see. That she could explore. I mean, there's lots of possibilities with that kind of show. I would totally watch that with this actress. I'm sure she's got a supporting cast that could work. Given enough time. Even like some of the characters from Mark from Moon Knight that we haven't seen, like Frenchie. Put him in there. That would be great. So yeah, I get where they're trying to go with her character, and I want to see, and I'm interested in the future of this character, but at the same time, I kind of have a little bit of, shall we say, reservations on the way that they're handling it in the short term with some of these revelations and having to do that. Do I think that there's a future with Mark? Probably not long term. I mean, having to deal with a husband with with dissociative identity disorder is challenging enough as it is. Leaving out his dark past, which we probably haven't even scratched the surface of it yet. We've only seen a little bit of it so far. I imagine we're going to get more in the asylum sequence. So, that's going to be stuff she's going to have to deal with when she finds out about that stuff too. So I would expect a lot of those issues are going to keep cropping up. And the fact that Mark keeps wanting to protect her from everything that he's done is not really exactly helping that relationship either, especially when she has deep, deep trust issues with him for valid reasons. So, yeah, this is not could they come together? Possibly. Is it one of those things that's going to last long term? I have my doubts, but you kind of want to see them together, so I guess we'll see.
All right, Nims, right quick, what do you think about everything I'm saying about Layla?
Well, first off, real quick, to Siskel and Ebert, it is possible to make a movie about a relationship, a love scene going in a car chase at 85 miles per hour. It's called the farcical comedy The Chase, starring Charlie Sheen and Chris and the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I can't remember her name. Chris Swanson. Yeah. So, and Flea is in it. So, anyway, go see that movie. It's absolutely ridiculous.
With Anthony Kiedis.
Yes. On this whole thing, I think that this is, to me, the biggest Disney-fied moment of the whole series. And I know that's saying a lot, but it really is. Because, and I'm gonna foreshadow a little bit, but by the end, when they're fighting together, and I won't go into what they're fighting and everything, they are fighting as happy partners. And I'm like, no. Even if she accepts the fact that she needs to save Mark's butt, bring him back from the dead, partner up with him, that is going to be a hate partnership. It is going to be a partnership where it's like, yeah, I'm coming to save you, you blankety blank, blankety blank. And then when they fight together and the fight's over, she turns around and clocks him in the face. He's like, what was that for? And she's like, because of this. And she clocks him in the face again. It's just going to be that way.
You're looking at Indy and Marion.
Yeah, it's like you haven't gone back to zero. You've gone negative at this point. And I may still love you, but I don't like you right now. So it's just, it's all of that. So, and that's the way they should have played it, and it would have been much more believable. And we would have been right there going, yeah, he kind of deserves it. In fact, he absolutely deserves it. And it's absolutely, and maybe you get past it, maybe you don't, but it would have shown even that much more depth in Layla's character, that she realizes that Mark is necessary, that her personal problems are petty in the grand scheme of things right now, but she's still a human being, and she doesn't like this man very much right now because of the implications of what he's, of her life and how he is fit in her life with the death of her father and everything. Talk about depth, and I think they really missed a moment going for the feel-good, happy ending, and then on top of that, they compound it, and I think Jeff and Steve's point is absolutely valid, where they're not together at the end, so it begs the question, okay, what happened? It's like, if they weren't going to be together at the end anyway, then have her be a human being and show a realistic response.
Realistic response. Okay, definitely agree with that. All right, y'all, well, that's going to be it for this episode. We talked about, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the show has always had so much potential. And again, I think it's doing so much, and it's doing so much of it well, to the point where we definitely want to see more. We wish we had more time in the story world, and we wish we had the different tangential themes and possibilities that the show presents. We'd like to explore that some more. So hopefully, with Moon Knight Season 2, they can do just that. I mean, they're going to have to get, whatever that adventure is going or whatever. But hopefully we can see, hopefully it's one of those things that picks up where this one ends. So we can see some of the stuff we're talking about play out maybe in the next episodes. Hopefully it gets more than 6 episodes. And so next time when we review next episode, that's a love it or hate it episode. I kid you not. You're either going to really love it or you're going to really hate it. There's no middle ground on the next one. So I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims.
No problem. No problem. Can't wait to talk about the next episode too.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be back talking about this again. Congrats once again to Nim. And I will leave you with one thing. Whenever a slick, charismatic villain wants to talk to you, it's not because he wants to have tea.
Thank you so much, Bracy.
Until the next phase of the moon.
Whoa.
Oh, the villain is not going to be spilling the kind of tea you want. It's not that kind of tea.
No tea, no shade. What?
So, thank you so much to everybody that watched us live. Don't forget to check out our other channels on YouTube and Comic Crusaders and the United Tapes Podcast Network, because we really do have something for everybody. Whatever you're into, retro stuff, dramatic stuff, horror stuff, author interviews, just straight comic material, we've got it all. So definitely check out some of our other content. And me and this crew will see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.
See you later.
Deuces.
Spoilers.